That is far too appropriate. No.
I think they were applauding for me.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Margaret, thank you so much. It's nice to see all of you here tonight, and especially since we're having a little bit of fun on this holiday week, so it's good to see so many new faces in the audience. Kevin, we're here to talk about your book. So I thought maybe the way to start off was to show everyone your book trailer and figure out why it is that you actually wrote the book in the first place. Can we have the trailer?
Who wrote the Constitution of the United States? Would you please recite the Constitution? Have you ever read the Constitution?
No.
What's your favorite part?
I like the bit around the edge. I like that kind of the sort of like the old pirate map, kind of coffee stained looking bit.
Who wrote the Constitution?
George Madison.
That's not a person.
George Washington.
That is a person, but that's incorrect.
George Jefferson.
George Jefferson?
Correct. Final answer. May I win?
Have you read the Constitution?
No, but I did see the movie. It's great.
There is no movie.
Spoiler alert. All right.
That's why I rewrote the Constitution. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much. That explains it all. And actually, we make comic hay of that, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. In my research for this book, or as I like to call it, inevitably, my me-search, forgive me. As she said, I've won Emmys for that kind of wordplay, okay? But in my research for the book, I found out that, yes, more American teenagers can name the Three Stooges than can name the three branches of government. Pretty shocking. About 3/4 of Americans believe that of the people, by the people, for the people is in the Constitution rather than being of the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln, and for crying out loud, didn't we learn that at some point, I suppose? Most egregious to me, I think, was that many Americans believe, in fact, almost half, believe that From Each According to His Needs was written by James Madison rather than Karl Marx, who, by the way, for the teenager in the audience, is not one of the Three Stooges, just so you know. It's not even Marx's brother. Well, he actually had brothers, but they weren't funny necessarily. So, and then you add to that, look, we could keep going. I know I don't mean to commandeer it right off the bat, but this goes to the top, as they say, because you may remember pretty famously a few years ago, no less than Congressman John Boehner held up a copy of his pocket constitution and said to the world, I stand here with the founders who wrote in the preamble, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, when unfortunately that's the second sentence in the Declaration of Independence, as we know. Now, I cast no aspersions. I begrudge no one, because my blind spots, I'm sure before I started this project, were as broad as anyone. You probably could have convinced me years back that if you asked me how the Constitution began, I would have said it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And in some degree, it actually was. So yes. Anyway, I just want to say thank you for being here. It's good to see so many, thank you for having me here. It's good to see so many friendly faces out there. In fact, if it's possible for someone who just rewrote the entire Constitution of the United States to say he is humbled, I am in fact humbled. And I would also say to you, if any friendly faces are slightly less friendly today, because you had to pay to see me talk, I understand, and I guess I would just merely encourage you not to think of it as a $5 service charge, or a $5 fee, or as a $5 penalty, but think of it as a tax, yes. The front row was way ahead of me on that one.
We've got some sharp ones
The front row
here.
was way ahead of me, so thank you for that. I'll count on you later, just so you know, indeed.
So what did you learn? What surprised you the most?
Well, beyond the ignorance of the Constitution, which is unfortunate, I do get asked the question, okay, what prompted this project? Why did you rewrite the Constitution? It would be perhaps too convenient, but not altogether incorrect for me to say what other people have said, which is, well, everyone else is rewriting the Constitution, so why not me? My turn. No fair. So for everyone who's ever said there ought to be a law, I get to say, hey, there's a whole new set of laws. You're welcome. Beyond that, I know I've said this a few times, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating. I had no choice but to rewrite the Constitution, because no less than Thomas Jefferson told me I had to. He told me I had to. He said, as you may know, that every Constitution naturally expires at the end of 19 years, because in his math, 19 years was a generation. So by his math, our Constitution, I guess, has been naturally expired for over 2 centuries. Dead, kaput, and expire, you might say, as they do. And I'm just feeling bad I'm getting to it now. It should have been rewritten 11 times. So I've been slacking for 2 centuries, and I owe you all an apology. Beyond that, there's also some things that have happened in the last few months that I feel like actually gave me, put a stamp on my work and said, hey, you did the right thing, because to some degree I felt like the Constitution needed a little bit of publicity. Recently, as we've seen, even though people certainly cozy up to it, cite it for all the good, reverent ways that we do and reasons we do, and unfortunately sometimes use it as a political battle, as a weapon in a political battle, it also felt like it needed some publicity. I was reassured about that recently when, as we saw, Justice Ginsburg was in Egypt and said that if she were actually redesigning a democracy this day and age, she wouldn't necessarily use the American Constitution as a model. I was kind of surprised to see that, since she's, of course, known for protecting every clause of it. But the truth of the matter is, she was just saying something that's already been happening, because as we may know, 25 years ago, 94% of American constitutions had used the American Constitution, at least in part, to base their constitutions on. Unfortunately, for the last 25 years, seems like none of them have. That's what certainly a study that came out in the NYU Law Review suggested. They look instead to things like South Africa, and this is especially galling people, Canada, right? Oh, yes, because in their estimation, those constitutions do more service to things like human rights, as they say it, and something called the, I want to make sure I'm getting this right, environment, yes. So that's why they look to it. Now, yeah, yeah.
This has been a theme of some of the interviews you've given about the book, and
right.
You also did on our blog, Constitution Daily, this week. We're talking about why it needs to be rewritten. In doing so, you compared yourself to the Chief Justice. Would you care to explain that?
I compared myself to the Chief Justice.
About why it needed to be rewritten. Yeah.
Well, I don't recall exactly what I said about the Chief Justice. I do remember, of course, going toe-to-toe with Justice Scalia on this.
You said to the Chief this week in your open letter to the Chief.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Forgive me, right. I basically said he's reassured me, because if he can rewrite a penalty into a tax, then certainly I, as an anonymous citizen, can do nothing less than rewrite the Constitution of the United States. It was a large leap, I recognize. Yeah.
But it was breaking news on Constitution Daily for us.
Absolutely,
Yeah, thanks for that.
Broke that news.
You mentioned your interview with Scalia. Tell me about your time with him. He's a character.
A character, that's certainly true. Fascinating gentleman. Now, obviously I wanted to meet with Justice Scalia, because I thought, really, who on the face of the planet, let alone in the country, would be most amenable to a page-1 rewrite of the Constitution? And it would be the man who's devoted his entire career to protecting every clause, feature, sentence, punctuation, and thumbprint on it, as we know. To my surprise, to my amazement, to my great glee, he agreed to meet with me. We met at the National Gallery and had a rollicking lunch. We did, in fact, yes, the satirist versus the jurist, so to speak. And like you said, incredibly charismatic fellow, as I think people know. We talked of many things constitutional, but I knew at some point I had to go to his bread and butter. I had to address the judiciary and propose my suggested changes to the Supreme Court. And as you might imagine, as soon as I said the words, well, let's talk about lifetime tenure, he picked up a fork, poked it at me, and said, don't you dare. Don't you dare change lifetime tenure. And if you do, at least grandfather me in, because I love my job. But now here's what's interesting about this, is that lifetime tenure, I learned in my research, is actually not in the Constitution. The third article merely says that justices shall serve during good behavior. Now, for a bunch of very good reasons, we've always presumed that that meant for life, because they were reacting to kings in England who would often willy-nilly remove judges from the bench. So they thought, let's go the other way with this for a while. And in fact, I can read a section, if I may, about that particular meeting that I think might be revelatory about how that went, as you can imagine. And by the way, yeah, this is my bookmark. It's an occupational hazard. You'll have to forgive me for that. Okay. So I've explained to you the difference between the actual language and how we've interpreted it.